last 2 years, we've had huge change. We went from working in our offices and all going to work. There were companies like Microsoft who were starting to lead the way in this more hybrid remote work kind of model. But of course, as we all knew, it was the COVID pandemic and lockdowns and the various rules that applied in different countries that forced us to change, like it or not. And so we instantly moved, within days almost, from this model of knowing where our devices and our identity and our data is. And it was all nicely, usually contained in a site or two. Brilliant. We knew where it was. And we instantly moved to this kind of model where our users, our devices, our data, and our infrastructure is in a multitude of locations by its very nature of cloud compute and also remote working. So this is where, as well, using the cloud management tools and everything really we're going to talk about this week, this is where we can adapt. Because now if your security is led by your infrastructure on premise, how is that managing your data in the cloud, your device on the user's, the user's laptop sat at home? How is it looking after controlling that? Quite often it isn't. So we have to adapt, and this is now through the use of these cloud security tools, how we can actually help adapt and adapt and update to the modern working world. So we have to keep that in the back of our mind at all times, really. So that's really what we're dealing with. And of course, the threat actors know this now. Yeah, it's worldwide. So again, when they're designing different attacks, they will attack to take advantage of people working remotely, perhaps being disconnected from the old security systems. So again, coming back to what I said about the basics, this is where they're attacking things like systems that might not be patched, because if they haven't contacted the patching server for a month, they've missed patches. If that patching server was on premise. If that user identity is a local account, unmanaged, again, that's a point of exploit. Because it's separate of the network. But by using the cloud technologies, of course, we can actually control that from the cloud, wherever that user device data infrastructure is. And again, on from that, I talk about threat actors, just to call out a couple particularly, but the behavior we've seen from these particular groups has been quite typical across many others as well. We could fill the day just talking about the different sort of threat groups that are out there. Two you might have heard of in the press, but still very, very relevant as examples. As I say, not by any means the only ones. We're seeing continual and, if anything, increased threat groups coming out of Russia at the moment. It's been very well documented by both people like Microsoft and the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, and other national security and federal agencies. So we're seeing a lot of these groups coming out there. So Nobelium, for example, they were the actor behind the attacks that targeted SolarWinds back in 2020. If you remember that threat that came out, and that's their sort of where they are focusing, is particularly around organizations that are integral into that global IT supply chain, so particularly people like managed service providers, but anyone who's in that sort of supply chain. So if any of you joining here today are in a similar position to us as a sort of part of that IT supply chain, then yeah, you could be at risk from them. Fin7, another one. Previously, they were focusing more on the US sort of retail, restaurant, and hospitality sectors, but we've absolutely seen the behaviour and the same model coming into other sectors as well, and particularly in the UK, such as the legal sector in the UK. We've seen evidence already now of them being active in those sectors. So again, they're moving laterally, these organisations, and there's many others, of course. I'm just calling these two out as two examples. And again, typically they're, and I'm sorry, I keep coming back to it, but they're doing things like, the fake emails. They're trying to find vulnerabilities, unpatched, unmanaged systems, poor user identity management. Once they use those to get in, they can move laterally across networks, elevate privileges, and start to then do some real damage, whether that's encrypting and applying ransomware, whether it's accessing sensitive data, and the list goes on. And of course, what they're also looking for is not just to compromise you, but they're also looking then to use you as a jumping point to your customers and their data. Think of it, we all hold customer data, we all work with customer data of some description, of varying sensitivities, of course, depending on the nature of your business. So if one of these actors can gain access via yourself, travel laterally into that customer data, that may be then a point that they could actually exploit one of your customers. Now, they might actually be their actual true target. That might be the one they really want to get into. And actually, they'll use your vulnerabilities to gain access over there. And just think, would you want to be responsible for when your customers having a serious breach? I'm sure we'd all agree none of us would. But that's where we now need to think with these groups, is that they're targeting particularly people in the supply chains, and then going laterally as well. But again, that's not to say that people like the people in the supply chain are the only people at risk. Yeah, obviously everyone is, but just to call out some of the way they're acting and the way they're working. So there's a lot of this sort of lateral movement going on, and that's quite common behaviour. But yeah, and as I keep saying, and I know I keep saying, I'm sorry, but I'll bang this drum all day long. It keeps coming back to these common sort of vulnerabilities they're using. But the key thing is keeping on top of this, keeping on top of those basics, but also take note of the information that's out there and available to you. People like us, we try and share information on the different security threats, things you can do about it. A lot of what we're talking about this week calls directly to this in the controls to do. Some of our blogs we put out will have this. Some of the things I share as well will be directly from people like the NCSC. But people like the NCSC also very much keen on getting this information out there. So if you go to their website, they've got some great blogs, news stories, all that sort of information. It's all there, and it's not deep dive technical. There is some of that resource, but it's not all that. So if you just want to keep on top of things, do check out their website, do check out their blogs. They've even got RSS feeds. So if you want, I actually did a short video on this on LinkedIn recently. You can even ingest those feeds into Microsoft Teams very easily. And then it just means all those updates are coming down from those organizations straight into your Teams channel. So it's just really great ways of helping keep on top of that news as it's released in a relatively unobtrusive way. We still obviously got to crack on and do all the rest of our roles as well. But yeah, there's some really good information out there. So highly recommend checking that out. And again, afterwards, do reach out if you want more sort of pointing in the right direction on that as well. We're always happy to share, get that information out there, share it. The more we know about it, the more we're doing about it, the absolute better. And just to round out on that, I talk about the NCSC. I reference them a lot. I use a lot of their content because it's good, it's on point, and it's current. Their kind of overall aim, they're responsible for the UK's nation state cybersecurity, and that's from government, MOD, top level, right down to the person in the street. And it's everything in between that they're responsible for. They're the way they operate and the way their methodology is centered is, we want to make the UK a really secure place to live and work and operate. Because at the end of the day, if the UK becomes too much hassle, it's too difficult to breach, these threat actors will look elsewhere. They'll go for the easy targets. So we want to make the UK and everyone, all the organisations, all the businesses in that, we want to make them as secure as we can, so we're unattractive for attack. It's not going to stop it, but it's another great step in the direction. If you keep that in mind, that's how they operate, and that's their sort of methodology, if you like, and that sort of permutates down beyond everything